This meeting to order. Pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Could I get approval of the county
So moved.
board minutes? We got a by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I have no changes this morning.
So moved, Mr.
Got a
Chair.
motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Social service report.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning.
The first thing I have on the agenda is a request to approve a contract between our agency and Jeannie Fritz, who is a mental health professional, as you might recall. About 5 or 6 months ago, we requested to do a RFP for this service. We received 2 responses to that RFP, Jeannie's and another. This was the least expensive of the options, as well as Jeannie is currently providing that service to another county. And so Penny, Melanie, one staff from each of their agencies reviewed the RFPs. We interviewed Jeannie and we feel like she's the best match for our staff. She will provide clinical supervision to all of the adult and children's mental health case managers. She will be charging $110 per hour for the services for about up to 20 hours per month. There are 15 case managers who will need clinical supervision, which is required under case management rules. So I'm here today to request this for approval, and it is already budgeted in our 2018 budget.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, as you recall, this was a discussion when we did some changing of positions, the ability to be able to find someone to do this service and actually employ them long-term was proving to be quite challenging. And so this was an alternative that allowed us to continue with what we need to have at a little bit more stable relationship.
Also move, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we got a motion by
I'll make
Commissioner
a second for
Lemire,
more discussion.
seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, Jeannie, where is she housed out of? Is she out of?
I believe Alexandria.
Oh, okay.
She provides clinical supervision to McLeod County, but she has actually been providing in-home services in our county for many years. We have had another contract with her for many years for another set of services. And so she is familiar with the staff and it's been a good relationship, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Brad, perhaps you can remind me a little bit one more time. This was one of those positions that when we would employ it, as soon as they would get their feet in the door and understand what was going on, because of money, call it whatever you want to, they were gone. Is that not correct?
That is correct. So what ended up happening is our mental health professional that we did employ, we reduced that position to a case manager. So there is a savings from that position in terms of moving from a supervisor to clinical supervisor to a case manager. And so we're shifting those funds to contract. That's a little more than the difference in a position, but ultimately the last 2, we've had 2 over the last 3 years. And once they get their LICSW, they've moved on to professional work, more professional work, so.
Okay.
Brad, is this money that we get reimbursed for, or does this come out of our?
Part of it will come out of our mental health grant with the work that we do with the adult workers, and then some will be levy dollars, and then some will get reimbursed through our cost pool.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And I do have the signature page there for you, Mr. Chair, to sign, so. The next agenda item is our cost report. This is a little later than usual. This is a 2016 cost report, so we're almost through 2017. Jim likes this because he's generally working on 2016 budgets, 2017 budgets, and 2018 budgets all at the same time. But this is quite a comprehensive report that the state provides to the counties and really defines what expenses we are paying for both through our budget and as a pass-through entity. So if you look at the first page of the handout, the cost report is in 3 program areas: support, health, and social services. And then expenses are defined as centralized county, public aid, county purchased, county personnel costs, and county non-personnel costs. So the first document that I put together for the board is a similar document. I do this document every year, and I just chop off 1 year and add another year. And so as you look at the overall cost comparative data report, in 2016, Morrison County spent about $86 million, $87 million in social service support and health programs. And if you look at the total change, we've had some changes, both positively and negatively, as we look from 2013 through 2016. The one thing that I would like to point out, the right-hand column on the top is administrative costs, so that's what it costs us to administer the programs. And the left side is the payment to clients and vendors. So this is the pass-through, some of our county dollars that we pay for services. And then the bottom part is the per capita cost. So kind of what I look at is the total cost comparison between our agency and the state, so the far right-hand column. As you can see, for the most part, we're either at or below the state average on our costs for the provision of social services across the state. You never want to be first and you never want to be last. We fall basically kind of in the middle across the board. So this is a comparison of all the programs, and then a comparison by the state. So
Any questions on this one?
I just do this. So in other words, we got $82 million, you might say, and it's costing our taxpayers $6 million, or
less. Our levy is about, in 2016 was, well, the last page will show the levy and where it
Okay.
goes based on the cost programs. But really, in terms of that $82 million in payments to clients and vendors, that is what we have either passed through or paid through county dollars. And then the $6 million, almost $6 million, is the administrative costs associated with administering all of those programs.
Okay.
So it's not tied to what our total budget or the levy that we request from the county board.
That's good, thank you.
So the first graph, and this is just by 2016, is the cost by program. Again, as you can see on a statewide basis, health programs are the most costly. About, $8.5 billion on a statewide basis. Social services, $4.1 billion, and support programs about $1.3.
Very
And the-
common misconception
Yes.
of social services and the programs about where the money goes.
Yeah. The next slide is the revenue that is received by the state to administer and pay for these programs. As you can see, the federal government puts in about 50% of the revenue to the state. The state's about 45%, the county is about 6%, miscellaneous is 1%. And then I'll go to the Morrison County specific data for 2016. Again, the total human service costs for Morrison County is about $87.9 million. A small percentage of that is support, 7%. Again, health is the primary cost driver, which is 67%. Mostly medical assistance dollars, and that's through the waivers, long-term care services, things like that.
Elderly, disabled.
Elderly and disabled. And social services is 26%. And that's all of our mental health programs, our children's programs, child support, those kinds of things, making a total of almost $88 million. And then as you look at the revenue, again, it's a similar percentage as we see on a statewide basis.
If I may, Mr. Chair, going back, do we have where we've sitting, you said that we don't want to be last, we don't want to be first, like the dollar amount of 88 million, how do we compare it to the surrounding area? Do you have any idea?
I don't in terms of total cost, but as we look at the cost comparison, so I did look at Todd, Crow Wing, Cass in terms of the cost comparison, and Cass was a little higher, was quite a bit higher. Todd was about where we were, Crow Wing was a little higher. when you talk about the overall, like the $88 million figure, that is gonna differ widely across counties just because of the population, ages, things like that. So, so the comparative data on the first page is probably more relative to an average about other counties, so.
That per capita
Yeah.
cost is about the best
Yeah.
way to compare.
So as you look at the revenue shares on the next slide, we are, as I said, we're similar to what the state government is overall, 49, 45%, 4% difference between the state and federal government. And then the county, the 3.7 is the levy that we had in 2016, if I put the right figure in there, so. This is, I worked on these numbers a little bit, so Jim's report is gonna be the most accurate, so.
Jim's looking at you right now saying, well, just a second here.
So again, I think as we've compared this for a number of years in terms of the revenue and expenses, it's actually been fairly steady in terms of the county costs for human service programs. We tend to complain about the counties taking more of a share of the cost for social services. That isn't necessarily true. However, I think the asterisk is the fact that social services costs continue to rise. And so, even though the county may be a similar percentage, we're still tied to a lot of the mandates that the state and federal government put upon us. So, we might still be paying 4% of the overall percentage of human service costs, but the costs continue to rise, and so.
So that 4%
Yes.
grows in
Yeah.
number, in raw number for
Not only,
regular levy.
Mr. Chair, not only is the healthcare part rising, but are you seeing an increase in clients too?
Increase in clients
That's
across,
gonna
across the board. Social services, on the social service side for sure in terms of the mental health, children and adult mental health, child protection, and just more costlier services as well.
And how about like the long-term care that?
Long-term, yes.
Are we prepared for the future?
We hope so. You know, I think, you know, we've continued to see an increase in the elderly population and long-term care. I think we have to pay attention to that. And it's not just about what we do either, it's about, do we have a provider network that can manage all the
Right.
service needs of those elderly? Can we keep them, can we maintain them in the most cost-effective setting? You know, whether it be in their own home or assisted living. I think that's even probably more of a worry than what we can do for them, so.
And Mr. Chair, if I can, if you look at the total human services costs in Morrison County, the 59 million largely is elderly population. If you look at a demographic presentation, we know we're getting older, and so I think that's huge. And if this is just for Morrison County, I mean, you saw the billions and billions
Yeah.
of dollars nationwide, that really, it's
If I
kind of
can-
hard to even put that in your brain, how that works.
If I can ask you to go back maybe to the comparative data, the first page.
Yeah.
And as you can see, there's been a 40% difference between 2013 and 2016 in health programs. So almost
Where should I be
17.
looking?
So if you go back to
At
the first page,
Right here, actually, if you look
under
at
the first page,
health program
Third
change.
row? Oh, there you go.
almost a
I gotcha.
$17 million increase in health programs.
So this was
Yeah.
largely that change with a lot of the ACA
The ACA
rules,
changes, yep.
because I think we're a year kind of behind that we're looking at, so
Yeah, it's a big
substantial
jump.
difference.
Yep. And that is tied to our aging population for sure. It's also tied to the changes in the ACA. It's tied to what providers can get reimbursed for now that they couldn't get reimbursed for before. So you had a lot of, you know, the hospital had a lot of risk because people would come in with no insurance, and so they would just take that hit. So, you know, I don't know if the hospital reports something similar to this, but I'd be curious to see in terms of their insurance history, what it is from 2013 to 2016.
And I think that's the struggle nationwide, is yes, insuring people is a good idea, because they're getting care, but it's really, really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so paying for that is the challenge.
And I think also, as we've heard, all of the folks that got on insurance probably hadn't had insurance for a long time, so a lot of catch up. We hear that especially from Apple Tree Dental. Now that we have Apple Tree Dental, a lot of the reason their wait list is so high is just because of the dental needs. MA population hasn't had the dental services. So they're doing a lot of fixing and repairing because prevention wasn't there before. They didn't have access to that, so.
It's a good example about that prevention cost versus care cost and
Yeah.
how important that is.
Is there a limit to, I mean, can you just take all people that get sick and just keep taking care of them? Or does every county have a limit to how much money we have coming in from the federal and state for nursing homes and, or does that number just keep growing if people are sick? Can we get reimbursed and where does the state and federal get all that money? There's gotta be something that runs out here or,
So we have delegated the elderly waiver, which is one of these health programs, to public health, and that does not have a cap on that. Staff are required to make sure they're providing the services necessary to maintain them in the least restrictive environment possible. But there has never been a cap on the elderly waiver, which provides services to those aging.
Mr.
Brad,
Chair.
would that have to change in law? for that
Yes,
to be- it
I
would
believe
have
it's
to be
I don't know if it's a
policy
federal or
change.
state requirement, but there's never been a cap on the elderly waiver.
Mr. Chair, federal, state, local, or wherever the funding comes from, where do you put a cap on that? That would be my first question. If you have elderly people that are in need, because that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about somebody that's got $1 million in the bank. We're talking about elderly people here that are in need. And it comes to be July 1st, and we're done. We don't take anybody more. We just let those people, we can't do that. I don't know, I don't really get where all the funding comes from either, but
well, that's my
we
question.
can't do that.
That's my question. Does it ever quit where we run out of money or? I don't.
Well, if you think that's part of the world that we're living in today.
That's not a question I want to answer.
That's the large debate.
Yeah.
That's that national debate about affordability of healthcare, about
Yeah.
affordability of supporting people, and to what level, and what are those expectations?
Yeah.
It's an issue that I'm glad I don't have to answer, because I don't know how you do, because it's a very tough.
Generally speaking, when we talk about the overall cost of human services, it generally goes to those people who aren't employed, maybe single parents. We're gonna save a lot of money by restricting those programs, but in the overall scope of things, that's not the reality. I think the higher costs in our areas are around taking care of our parents, our disabled family members, and to some degree, kids getting preventive health care. You know, and that's where, you know, the ACA really has, I think, played a part in making sure that kids have a higher income threshold to qualify, and so getting them the preventive care hopefully will reduce healthcare costs. But if you talk about the health programs, I mean, that is the cost driver for most human service programs, is the cost of medical assistance and the waivers.
And that, I think, is one of those things that the constituent base, it's hard to understand, because it's so easy to go after that low-hanging fruit of support programs, and that's not what drives the cost of tax and government-supported dollars.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
So the next one is, Jim has kind of laid out where our levy is used. So in 2016, and I see my number doesn't match up to Jim's, so.
I have an explanation
Oh,
for that.
and he can explain. That's why he's here. But really, you know, as you talk about setting levies and things like that, so you set a levy for social services every year, and this is how we lay it out. So I'll turn it over to Jim.
All right, getting back to that discrepancy on the levy used in 2016, Brad's number was 3.7, mine's closer to 3.2. That has to do mainly with the program aid, disparity aid, and market-provided aid is not included in the cost report on DHS's side type thing. It's money that's split by budget, percentage, to different departments or agencies. You know, we might get, I really don't know what the total, Steve's not here, but Waco, that brings our total levy needed from local down to 3.2 million out of the $87 million. Locally spent, again, that spent by DHS and other programs was 87 million. We're closer to 9.9 million in total spent locally. Of that, 5.3 was just on payroll. costs, and comparing that to what 2015 was like, you know, we're up about $500,000 on total costs. Levy Waco needs is up about 300,000. Payroll costs about Waco another 400,000. So that is the nuts and bolts of it. Children's Services is costing us, you know, more. I like to blame that. A lot of that is on North Star not being reconciled back. We're still reconciling 16.
So that's an out-of-home
Money.
placement funding source, so the North Star might be a little confusing for them,
Yep.
as it is for me, because it's a funding formula and how they reimburse us for out-of-home placements. They put all the out-of-home placement dollars in one pool and separate it, so, and there has been a gap in the state reimbursing us for those costs.
That is about all I have. I also get laid down the years prior to that there, you know, as of our $9.9 million, 32% of it was through local levy. That falls kind of like within the average. You know, we've been as high as 35% back in 2011 and as low as 29% back in 2014.
So, you know, really in summary, this report really defines all of the human services costs that Morrison County is responsible for. A lot of those, that 8.8 million stays in the community for services provided to residents of our community. Some may be because clients might be placed in other places, but for the most part, out of that $3.7 million county funding, we're responsible for about $88 million in costs. So this is always an interesting, I think, presentation in terms of just showing the community where the costs are, where they go to, and then just what you as county commissioners are responsible for when it comes to the levy around our budget.
Yeah, it's incredible. how
Good
much
confusing report, thank you very much.
The 9.8 is part of the 80.
Correct.
87.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. If you have any questions or you want to look at the 108-page document, more than willing to share it, so.
I mean, what I get out of that is that $87 million comes into the area and it costs the taxpayers about $3.2 million to get that $87 million.
3.2 million in property tax dollars, yes.
Yep.
The
Yep.
rest is funded differently.
Right.
Yep.
All tax money, but not directly from
Property
Morrison
tax.
County.
Yep.
The other
And it-
portion
and
is the other people in the state, the federal, you know.
And
we all
again,
report again.
the other thing, you know, again, 90% of this cost is a mandated cost. So you as decision makers in the county have little control over not doing it. You certainly have control over how to do it. But all of those things that are paid for are really a mandated requirement of counties, local units of government. And the other 10%, what I'd say, if we don't do it, our costs would be even higher because some of those things are preventative in nature or early intervention in nature, and so.
Thank you very much for
And
the
one other
report.
question, does the county, the state, federal pay for the housing too to build additional? Because I don't know, I'm sure we'll run out of housing eventually with the way the population's going.
We don't directly pay for housing. In the financial assistance program, there is a housing deduction, so they get a credit for paying their housing, but we don't pay for housing directly. Generally speaking, that is paid for by those complexes that are reimbursed through the federal government. So it's income-based, and then they get reimbursed by the federal
Because again,
government.
I brought this up, we have another county to the north of us, they ran out about 300 and some thousand, and again, this is for mental health, because they don't have the proper housing, so then they pay for what's down in Anoka or St. Peter
Yep.
that way, so, very expensive.
Housing is an issue.
We
It's
don't
an issue.
often get directly involved in those provider services. We fund them, but we don't develop them as often. We let the private sector build that, so to speak, either whether it be buildings or professional services or whatever it might be. But it will be interesting as the population ages and as mental health becomes more and more prevalent. I think that's an issue that's very
Well, the
very
baby
on the radar.
boomers are getting up there, and we're the largest population,
Yeah.
so we're gonna eventually all, they don't, but that's 10, 20 years of that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
This is just information.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep, just informational.
That's what it says on here. All right, thanks, Jim.
Great information.
So the next thing on my, and then I just asked Michelle to sit in and listen to this from the public health perspective, so. The next thing on the agenda is a public health request to change the grade of the nursing supervisor. As you might recall, because of the structure change, we've talked about supervision in both agencies. And as a result of some of the changes, we hired a human services supervisor to kind of carry across. I asked Deb if we could send in a request to review the grade of the nursing supervisor in public health. That was the driving factor, but I also think there have been other factors such as having to hire public health nurses in which this nursing supervisor is responsible for at very high steps because of the inability to find qualified candidates. And so I think that's created kind of a challenge within our compensation system, which it's a fixed compensation system. And so we asked our HR consulting firm, Triad HR, to review the nursing supervisor position. It's currently at a grade 32. In her review of the nursing supervisor position, she did increase the requirements for education. And so it would raise that to a grade 34 within our compensation system. And again, I also see this position similar to those on the social service side that supervise case managers and some of these waiver programs, as well as just, again, she is supervising nurses and that professional standard as well. And so I'm here today to ask if we could increase the grade to 34 for our nursing supervisor. We've talked about this during our budgeting process, during our transition of department heads, and we've also talked about this at planning. And so I'm here to ask for approval to move this to a grade 34.
Could I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
I'll second it for more discussion.
Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, Brad, talking further on this is that, please remind me one more time about the fact of when we hire a nurse at public health, the difficulty, number one. And then, of course, to have the supervisor there, that difficulty. And when I say the difficulty, as much as financial, and obviously this is part of our goal in order to hang on to one for longer than a year, but can you kind of go
So
back in time a little
Mr.
bit?
Chair, I don't know that it's a goal about retention right now as it is as much about the responsibility, about the position and how it fits in the overall structure of
Okay.
this. So,
And I see that, I get
you know what
that part.
it's
Yep.
slightly different. It's been something that when we look at, the two agencies in a little bit different light,
Yep.
what it's highlighted is that the level of supervision in one area really is quite similar to what the supervision is in this other area in terms of the level of staff that they're supervising, the sheer number of staff that they're supervising, the complexity of the programs, the overall budget that they're responsible for, all of that. And so it's been more of that that's prompted it. But also, kind of peripherals that are coming in are the fact that I think the last nurse application process that we had out there maybe had one, if not two, if we're lucky. I think just one response.
Exactly.
It is difficult, so we need
Exactly.
to make sure of compensation that we're able to attract folks as best as we can. And this is a position that supervises those that are hired, and we've had to adjust that initial starting pay substantially to be able to bring people in. It's been very, very difficult. So all of that combined, but I would say the most driving is that whole idea of looking at the agencies as a combined unit and how they kind of fit into one.
Good explanation, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Brad, this individual will have more responsibilities after Katie left?
She'll have a little more responsibility, just because of the relationship with the hospital and just the fact that there won't be a full-time director over there. So I would tend to think I will ask a little more of her maybe than Katie has asked of her around managing the department.
Okay, thanks.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, we talked about this 6 months. I don't know how long Katie's been gone already. It's been, time goes by pretty fast. But this was all part of the discussion whether, and that's why it took you so long, and Deb, to make this decision, because we put you as director of both departments. But I believe with all this said and done, there's still some savings in there, whether it's minimal of 5,000. That has nothing to do with right now. But, so this is something that, we're not just, even in the last month, this is something we've discussed for many, many months, and then we've got the information for you. And I don't know if you have any more information on what was discussed in the past 6 months.
As we've discussed the structure, and you take the overall salary of that director position, and how can we reinvest it in a way that better supports staff? And so as Deb and I talked about the restructure of both organizations, directors are certainly important, because that's me. However, but I think supervisors are much more important in terms of supporting the staff and the work that they do, and those kinds of things. And so this really provides, I think, a little bit more support for staff, as well as, I think, back to your point, which isn't the most important, there is a savings, an overall savings with what that director's salary was in terms of what we've done to this point around the restructure.
It might not be real important, but the fact of life is, it is a cost-saving measure in the big scope of
Yep.
everything. Thus, it is important, because
Yep.
our job is also to give the best bang for the buck, and I believe that we are.
Yep.
Just so
Yeah,
we're on the
and
right
I think
page
we
here.
just got through talking about how costs are increasing that are out of our control. And so when we do have the opportunity to save those costs, I think you have directed, we ought to take advantage of that. And so this overall plan, as it's developed, and I think Commissioner Winter had a very good point about, it's not a knee-jerk reaction, it's seeing how things play out. It's taking time to really look at how this works together. And I'm not going to say there won't be changes in the future that might come about as a result of when we look to what used to be two and combining them as one. You can't help but, look at changes that may evolve in the future. And so I think it's our responsibility, as directed by you as a board, to make sure we have and take advantage of cost savings when possible.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We got a first and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Have a good Christmas if I don't see you before then.
You do the same.
Thank you
Keep
very
smiling.
much. You too. Okay, next, Land Services, Amy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Amy.
Okay, I'm not sure what order.
Yes.
Okay, so the first item I have for you is to approve the 2018 Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Plan. This is required, this is an annual submittal that needs to go to the state of Minnesota in connection with the annual aquatic invasive species funding that we receive. We did send out the plan to you and discussed it at a planning session earlier. Nothing has changed since then.
I'll move on this, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion
Second.
by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? If not, all in
You know what,
favor?
this is more, all again goes for education. It does not go for paying somebody to hand out pamphlets or anything. This is for education purposes.
Our aquatic invasive species plan has been centered
Right.
around public education and about building capacity within our community for having people on the ground that are educated. We also, the grant program to the lake associations comes out of this. So yes, primarily that has been the focus we've had in our plan, and it will be moving forward.
So, Mr. Chair, Amy, I just have to beg the question. And I'm all about education. Please don't misunderstand me. There's gonna come a time where we're educated. I hope. Do we have a plan in the future as to what we're gonna do?
That's why we look at this plan every year.
Okay,
So
okay.
we
That's fair
take a
enough,
look
too.
at what's on the horizon, what else do we need to do, what else do we need to accomplish. I think the grant program to the lake associations has broadened that a little bit because we are allowing for those localized programs and projects that advance aquatic invasive species work, but really leaving that up to those local people to decide what's best for their lake, what is needed. So that's where we offer that little bit of flexibility. On a countywide level, we're not looking at doing a full-on inspection program and having seasonal staff and all of that. but we are enabling our lake associations to undertake some of those programs on a lake-by-lake basis if they so choose.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The next one, I believe, is to consider the conditional use permit request for Thomas and Chrissy Milner. And this is,
The proposed
Resolution?
land
Okay.
use ordinance, sorry.
all right, I'm gonna switch. Okay, so the second item is to consider the proposed land use control ordinance amendments. These were recommended for approval by the Planning Commission on November 27th, 2017. And these also were discussed at a planning session prior to public hearing. So nothing has changed since then in these amendments.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. And now finally, I do have to have you consider the conditional use permit request for Thomas and Chrissy Milner. Again, this is to expand to a Tier 2 feedlot. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with 6 conditions. And those conditions were to abide by local and state law, notify the road authority when hauling manure during road restrictions, abide by the good neighbor, stormwater and feedlot odor minimization plans, plant and maintain a 50-foot wide grass buffer around the perimeter of the barns after construction for ongoing stormwater management. An extended cement apron shall be poured at the end of the new barn for short-term manure stockpiling. The apron shall be a minimum of 1,600 square feet in size. And notify the feedlot officer of all barn cleanout events and manure transfer and stockpiling.
Can I get a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
The question would be, I'll direct it to Amy,
Yeah.
is why the cement slab first?
Sure. So the cement slab, was the soils on site at this particular facility are not suitable for stockpiling. So, and that was brought out in the staff report at the public hearing. And so the condition recommended by the Planning Commission then was to avoid the stockpiling of manure on the unsuitable soil. And so that's how that cement slab. The other reason for that is the producer was utilizing a cement slab for stockpiling on the existing barn, and so that's what he had offered out for the
Thank you.
second barn.
So then my question goes just a little bit further than that. In the world that we're living in today with the nitrate issues that we've talked about over and over and over, and this is not directed to the Milners at all, it's directed hypothetically to all of them, all of our chicken barns, if you will. We now have a cement slab out there, and we're now gonna stockpile manure on it for whatever given amount of time it is, because it doesn't matter, because it might be having a giant rainstorm, I don't know. There's no curbing on this cement slab,
There's no
assume.
requirement to have
So
curbing.
my question is that, are we sooner than later as a board gonna start talking about manure storage? To where it's kind of secure manure storage? To where if we do have this rainfall event, that it's not going to go right off of the cement slab? Not directed to the Milners at all here. That's just kind of a hypothetical one. And I apologize for that, but I think that one of these days we need to talk about that.
Can I answer that a little bit? Well, don't.
Why, sure.
No, but we do have two things here though, don't we? We do have stacking slabs on barns with roofs on them.
I'm not talking about roofs.
No,
Correct. So when
but-
you say stacking slab, that's an engineered structure that has a roof that is total containment.
Right.
Yes.
Yep, and this one here, this stacking slab with more cement out in front of the barn was because the gentleman sells his manure and he hauls it away, and it was a matter if it sits there for a little while. Correct? Is that kind of why the cement went out
Well,
front?
the cement slab was,
two reasons.
generally
The
when
soil
you're,
as well.
when you're cleaning the barn out, you're going to have the pile. Whether you're going to later apply it on your own fields when you can get into your fields, or that you're transferring it and you're coordinating that transfer to another producer or to another field not owned by you. The issue, regardless of who's going to get the manure and who the receiving field is that the soils right on this site are not suitable for stockpiling. So regardless of where the manure is going, it cannot be staged or piled right there. And so that's why the producer had offered out the cement slab. It's not a stacking slab. It doesn't meet the specs of a stacking slab. But that, of course, has been a conversation that has come up in many of these meetings about proper stockpiling, the nitrate issue in some of these areas, and then also looking at, are the soils suitable? In this case, they're not.
If I may, Mr. Chair, but I think Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that a producer can take the chicken manure out to a field, and if the ground can hold it, they don't need a cement slab or, and then I think it can stay there up to 1 year, correct?
Correct. Short-term stockpile is considered, you can stockpile up to 1 year. We did have a similar condition on another one where we had unsuitable soils and where they either needed to be storing it in a stacking slab on site, or it needed to go off-site to suitable soil for stockpiling. So that's another way that the board has handled that in the past.
Amy, do we approve the off-site stacking?
We would, with the condition that they notify the feedlot officer, that's something the feedlot officer would be verifying, is that wherever the stockpile would be on suitable soils.
Okay, if it goes to a different farm.
Correct.
Then it's on suitable soil. Okay.
Yes.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, how does one know that if have stocking out in field A, how do I know if it's been there a year or not, or somebody,
With the notification requirements, it's a little bit easier to track because the feedlot officer is notified
Right.
when that's happening. So then that's something that we can easily keep track of for the length of time.
and that's something that we started kind of.
Yes, just in the last couple of months, yes.
Yeah, so that's been one of the big changes to help us
Yes.
know where things are, the paperwork of where it's going,
Correct.
where it's stacking, and so forth, so. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Good
Thank you.
discussion.
That's all I have for you
Thanks,
today.
Thank
Merry
you
Christmas,
kindly.
Amy.
Merry Christmas.
There's everything in there.
Already up to-
Mr. Chair, I just snuck in to see if Kathy was available. She was on the phone.
gonna
Let me
sneak
try
in.
one more time.
Would you like
I
another-
think I might do.
Yeah, we'll take a 5 minute.
take a half an hour break.
Take a 5 minute
Take a
break
5
here.
minutes, at least 5 minutes.
Morning,
Welcome,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Morning, Kathy.
Good morning. So I apologize. I wasn't trying to dodge you. Something got confused, but that's okay. But I know I needed to present that. We got a $250 donation from Swanville Lions. And so I know that was one thing I did
Yep,
have
that
to bring
needed
up. So
approval for you to be able to accept. So that's the
So
action
moved.
item.
Got a motion by
Second.
Commissioner Winter, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion?
Yeah, why do we need approval by the board on a donation?
Well, because it's outside of our regular budget
To
parameters.
receive the funds.
To be able to receive the funds and then use them. So it's just,
I'm assuming
Appropriate to
you know where
accept
the
that.
funds are going, right?
Right, so we have a small fund that is like a crisis fund in case there's a veteran that has a extraordinary situation that, and we don't publicize that or let anyone know, because otherwise you'd have people coming in and that kind of thing. But
auditing
makes
rules require us to make sure
There we
you,
go, rules, huh?
you are.
Rules.
Yeah.
You are very aware of and authorize all fund accounting issues, so that's your job.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And also included was Kathy's report, which we talked about at the last planning session, so we
Yeah.
got that covered.
So sorry, I feel so bad you guys were waiting for me. I'm like,
No
oh,
deal, no worries, it's okay.
all right.
Thank you,
I'll take
Kathy.
care. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Kathy. Merry Christmas.
Okay, next we'll have corrections. Welcome, Nicole.
Good morning, Nicole. How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good, wonderful, thank you.
Good.
She's dressed as a nutcracker.
I see that. I see that.
Yes.
That's okay.
Before you today, we have the 2017 interim comprehensive plan that needs to be approved to move forward and be submitted to the Department of Corrections. Because it is a requirement for them to give us money. 1 year I submit a
2-year full comprehensive plan, and then on the off year, I submit a shorter interim plan. Just outlines our goals and what we're gonna work on for the next year.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion by
Second.
Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Is there any other discussion?
Who reviews, Mr. Chair, who reviews this, Nicole?
The Grants and Subsidies Unit at Department of Corrections reviews it to make sure that we are in alignment with evidence-based practices.
And we talked about this at our planning session, so. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Opposed? Motion carries.
very good.
Suspense is killing
An agreement, right? Somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, the second item is the new requirement by the state of Minnesota for pass-through funds coming through the Department of Corrections, and it's our Community Corrections Act subsidy money that comes from the legislature. The Department of Corrections is now required to have us sign a grant application agreement. That was also included in the packet. And I am requesting permission to be the signature with authority to sign. And this will happen every year, that we'll need to sign this to say, yes, please give us money.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion?
Just one question. This has to come before the board every year, or comes before you, and now you've got the authority to sign?
That's up to you.
Yes, that's what I would interpret that and like to see,
That's
so
how-
it's.
that's how I
it's
interpret it.
regular.
For yearly, I'm authorized until further
To
notice.
take money.
To take
Perfect,
money?
to accept money, yes.
Yep, that's how I,
Yes.
This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Commissioner Winchard?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
And aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you,
Merry
Nicole.
Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, next we will have auditors report. Good morning, Deb.
Good morning, Deb.
Make-
Auditors report.
What do we have first? Okay, first thing we have are the delinquent mobile homes. Every year we bring in those mobile homes that are more than 10 years old.
If I may, this is something we just started bringing in. We haven't done it. Probably
We've been
2 or
doing it
3
the
years
last
ago.
few years.
Right, so
Yep.
now it's kind of like, now we're just finally gonna say, let's catch up and take them out.
Yeah, rather than leaving them out there and,
Because some of these are quite old, aren't they?
from this point on, we don't have anything
Right.
more than 10 years old, yeah. See,
Mr. Chair, I have a question right off the bat, if you don't mind. Some of these are businesses. I'm looking at the list here, I'm not picking out any one person, I'm just gonna
Yep.
say Little Falls Cottages, I see 3 of them right in a row. That's a business. So we're just forgiving the business and saying it's okay. Am I correct? I just need to make myself
at
clear.
this point in time, yeah, that would be what this is saying.
I'm also seeing another individual that I happen to know is deceased. And of course, we certainly aren't gonna get any funds from a deceased person, I understand that very clearly. And I understand that one wholeheartedly.
Right.
I don't understand businesses.
Yeah, we've been having trouble trying to get some of these businesses to clean up the records and either put the trailers in their name or take the trailers and homes out of their name. So what we're trying to do is work together with like the assessor's office and the mobile home parks to try to go out, and we're trying to make this a yearly thing, to sit down with them and meet with them and say, okay, here's what we show, what do you show? And trying to make this moving forward a little bit cleaner. But the old records, there's nothing we can do to clean those up. But moving forward, we know we have deceased people on our records. We need to clean those up, things like that. Some of these old mobile home cottages, these are things that, we don't even know who owned them back then. We know that they were in their park, but we honestly don't know. Right, we know they're not there now. We don't know specifically whether they truly were theirs, somebody else's, whether they got abandoned. That was the best we could do for ownership at the time.
So we're anticipating this to go on forever. Next year, we're gonna have another new list like this. We're gonna see 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different, no doubt, businesses here that we're forgiving.
For mobile homes, we will always have a list. We're hoping the businesses are gonna get cleaner and cleaner.
Okay.
Okay,
If I
first
may,
of all,
Mr.
can I?
I'll make a
Yeah, let's just say,
motion.
let's
I'll
make a motion on
for
this.
more discussion.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Winter, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion?
I think the challenge is here, because you have the mobile home sitting somewhere, but they don't own the land underneath it.
In a lot of cases, true.
And therefore, they still have, I don't know if the assessors or whoever comes around, there is a tax to be paid on that, but they don't necessarily, if it's a mobile home park, again, that they should, the mobile home park is not responsible for collecting those taxes, correct?
Correct.
So this way, if they don't pay him, he's paying or she's paying the taxes underneath, and I think that's where the problem lies, correct?
And a lot of times, the problem is the people who live in those homes don't live there for a full year.
Right.
They come and they go, and so we might know who lived there January 1st, but they don't live there October, November. And so trying to keep those people and get them to pay those taxes, most of those people know they're not gonna be there at the end of the year. They know they're gonna come and go, and so they just don't pay. Not most of them, but a lot of people do that.
So this is the tax on the trailer itself, because the property tax in the park is being paid for by the business.
Right, the businesses are paying their own taxes, they're
Yep.
paying for their land, their buildings, and the ones that they purchase and buy, they're paying for those, and we're getting a better handle on what they're actually buying and putting into their inventory. It's cleaning up some of this old stuff that was out there that nobody knew who actually had it, or where it was.
I think
So-
the easiest way would be to license them. So every year you have to renew, it's like a car.
Well, based on this discussion, if there's a trailer house at a trailer park, someone moves into it on January 1st and moves out of it on July 1st, someone moves into it July 15th and out of it on December 31st, nobody's paying, and it's okay, we're gonna forgive it. I
Well,
don't
we're
get
not
it.
saying it's okay.
Well, I don't get it. I'm missing something here. Who's paying?
Nobody in some cases.
That's what I'm saying.
And we're trying to collect on those, but it's very difficult for that transient population, those people who come and go and move all the time. Because some people know they can get away with it. Other people are very conscious about paying what they owe, but some people know they can come and go and get away with not paying their bills.
I'm confused a little bit with Jeff. Are you saying somebody's moving, I'm looking at somebody's moving a trailer in there,
Not necessarily,
Not
and
no.
they're taking the
Usually,
trailer out?
Trailers
no,
there.
usually it's the people where there's a trailer sitting there and.
That would be owned by who?
That's just it, it changes ownership all the time. And we can't keep track of
Okay.
the title changing hands on a regular basis.
I see what you're saying.
But I think
Somebody's
what hap-
selling
I
that
think what
trailer
happens
all the
is-
time.
I mean, even now, I could move a trailer into a court,
Yeah.
okay? I own that trailer now, but you know what? Or I maybe got it for nothing, because, because the court owner, all they want is their rent money. They're not getting, they're not responsible for paying the taxes on that
Right,
trailer.
gotcha.
So now I'm gonna move out, I'm gonna rent it out to Joyce, just use, she can rent it out now, or sell it to her, then I'm
Gotcha.
gonna sell it to Mike, and that's where the problem lies.
So how do we fix that?
License them all.
Well,
Very good.
Commissioner Windsor, that's not a good idea. We can take that to our legislators and see
Right.
if that's a way to change that. But the transfer of ownership isn't supposed to occur unless taxes are paid in full on that trailer. So that's why we don't have a list of hundreds of them. We have a
Right.
list of a smaller amount of them. But still, sometimes that happens, unbeknownst to
Right.
like proper title transferring practices occurring or whatever it might be, and so they get kind of lost sometimes, or they're not functional anymore and they're no longer physically usable, or who knows, or
They
they
get
were
abandoned
physically
or-
moved off of the site or something like that. So this continues and always has been an issue, and it is in every county that has mobile home parks and mobile homes that exist. It's the personal property tax system is a difficult one to administer because of the mobility of what you're licensing, really. It's been something that's been on a radar. I recall, I thought, writing them off when I was treasurer too, but maybe, but it's something that continues to be an issue out there. It's a difficult tax to administer, it's a difficult tax to collect. I like the idea of working with the park owners on seeing if there's a way to do that a little bit better, but until that happens, I think we're always going to see this as a issue, I guess.
Is there any permitting done for them businesses through the county, or is it through the city?
No, as a matter of fact, this last year, the legislature passed a training requirement for the businesses that allow mobile home rentals. And, if they have a trailer park, they have to go through at least 12 hours of training. So we're hoping that that's gonna start seeing some kind of turnaround, but I don't expect great leaps and bounds, but hopefully a little bit of more cooperation with us and the tax system and some of that.
I'm just, back to my question, are they permitted?
If a new one, they would.
Like the business itself, is that permitted to have a trailer
Mobile
park?
home park, I would assume it's a CUP, I don't know offhand with the land use ordinance, if they're in the city limits, which a couple of them are,
I don't
that's
think
not
we have any in
through
the
us.
county.
I'm trying to think, I don't know that there is an actual organized park outside of the city limit, but.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it would be a permitting process.
But if I
Through the
may,
city,
Yeah.
not through the town.
Well, I don't think we have one, I can't say
No, I
for
don't
sure.
think so.
Public health permit then, anyway?
I don't believe
They're
public
saying we
health
could
would be
hold their-
involved. It would
hold
be a
their
city
permit.
issue.
Whether,
Well, we
It's their
have,
name
we
on it.
have other tools that are used, things like revenue recapture or, so these individuals are put on that list, I assume. I don't know about the business owners, are they properties that would have been rented out then that the business owns?
Yeah, I think what's happened is like people have abandoned them, and so the businesses are trying to now take ownership of those where they've been abandoned for so long.
But how do we transfer without delinquent?
There are rules that say once they've been abandoned for a certain length of time, that you can go in and take ownership. There's a way you have to go through court to do that.
But you don't need that little title sheet thing that.
No,
Motor
there's
Vehicle
a way
requires.
to get around that through the court system. So some of the, like, Little Falls cottages have started doing that sort of thing. So, we're trying to clean up some of this stuff and working with mobile home parks, hoping that some of that training that they can do is gonna help with some of that. We're hoping that Department of Revenue is gonna teach them how they can do some of that stuff and what they're required to do and what they can't do and that kind of thing. So,
And I'm assuming when he's bringing it in for deer hunting, I don't know if that's, they leave them up there, that's part of it too. I think it's just very difficult to track.
it is,
But I say, the dollar amounts aren't that much, but for each one, but when you add them up,
every year, yeah.
that becomes an expense.
And that
And
goes
ours are-
back to our conversation just a little bit ago. Our job is to hold on to that and manage that money the best that we
Best
can.
we can, yeah.
And when I look at I look at a list here and I see a business named at least 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
and they're listed as the owner of the property or the owner of the actual trailer.
Of the trailer.
They're listed as the owner of the trailer, and I'm saying, okay, we're gonna forgive them.
Yeah.
I gotta just tell you, it's kinda hard to swallow. I don't mean that directed at anybody, but it's kinda hard to swallow. I'm anticipating everybody at this table is gonna pay their property taxes this year. But if I'm an owner of a trailer, mobile home, excuse me, well, maybe I'm not gonna pay it. I don't get that. And then maybe in a couple of years, I'm gonna have it forgiven anyway.
I have to agree with you on
I
that
just
one,
don't get that.
especially when the
I'm a
business,
little lost.
if my understanding is, if somebody abandoned that trailer, the business took it over, so they should be paying the property tax on it, or the taxes on
If
it,
they took it over.
yeah.
And going to that point, if they took the trailer home over, can't we put that on their taxes, the property, or why, so you got an X dollar amount here for one of them is roughly 400 or 500, why can't we just slap that on their property taxes to the mobile home park? If they
Well,
own it.
and we are here, I mean, it's put in their name because they have,
He means a lien on their property.
Lien on
yeah.
it.
Well, and that way we can't yet.
We
not
are here, we're
legally.
forgiving
but-
this in front of us.
If you wanna
That's the
approve-
idea.
Yeah.
One idea would be to approve the list, taking out
Yes.
property owners, and maybe Deb could come back with a little bit more information on how that works with business owners and what we've done to try to collect on that, given they are functioning, I assume businesses right now, Is
Yep.
Pine Point Properties a functioning
I'd have to
park?
check on Pine Point.
So maybe
They're
that
still
would
in
be allowed.
business, or they're
Yeah.
not
I
in
don't
business,
know.
we don't know.
Well,
Or
there's-
did they change their name over the last year
I
or
don't
two?
Or there's an LMS property.
You know what, to move forward, I would like Deb's idea. Let's take this business properties off and improve the rest and give us some more information. That's my motion.
You said okay, just a minute, you said business properties, does that mean we have two?
Looks like you got two on here, right?
No, it looks
Or
like
three.
you have
We've got
Pine
LMS
Point,
too.
LMS,
There's various
WKW.
versions.
Anything that ends in properties, you got, or incorporated, there was one.
Anything that's not a person's name.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, we can definitely do that and come back with those.
Please, yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
good information.
There's at least
Okay,
4 that I
Just a
see.
second, now, we had a motion, but you amended your motion to take these off,
Right.
correct? And did
I
my,
would second that amendment.
okay, and you had second that, okay. We have a motion to approve these properties with those businesses taken off. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for that
Yeah,
conversation.
that was a good one.
okay, the next thing we have would be the grant application for our election equipment that we would like to submit to the state.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve, Mr. Chair.
We got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I looked at this stuff over and over and over, and I'm not gonna reread it one more time. And I'm glad Joyce is here, and I'm glad Deb is here, because I have a quick question. All the election equipment in Morrison County, every bit of it, I don't care what township you're in, is all owned by Morrison County?
Correct.
And I apologize to everyone, I just was a little unclear of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We first go around like 10 years ago. There was federal money.
Yeah.
And we got enough townships and cities that wanted to go mail ballot.
Yeah,
At the beginning of it, we didn't know if we'd have enough money to cover it all. And we thought maybe the townships and cities might have to kick in back in '06.
Yep.
But enough of them went to mail ballot that left enough money to buy equipment for everybody. So we got a good balance between open precincts and mail ballot precincts. And so it gets us to
because
own
it's
the
sooner than
equipment.
later with equipment, you know, the grant money, call it whatever you want, the free stuff coming from the state, probably is gonna come to a halt, and it's going to be a Morrison County tax issue, I would assume.
Yes. We fully expect that, and the state has told us that it's gonna dry up. And so we've been setting aside money every year, and that's where about half of the money for this equipment is coming from. And we expect to continue to set aside so much every year to pay for future equipment needs.
Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just because we're asking for this amount doesn't mean we're gonna get it all.
No, probably not.
We could do.
Any other questions? Not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, and so we're asking that you pass the resolution that was included also.
Can I get a motion?
What did you just approve?
Yeah.
What-
So we have the grant request and we have the resolution, so I'm not sure what.
So can you put them both
Isn't
together?
that
Yeah,
all
if
one
we can put them
The
together.
resolution is a grant request.
That is all
Okay.
one, is it
Yeah,
not?
Okay.
that's what I,
Yeah.
we were
Perfect.
asking for the grant.
think it's all
We were
one.
asking for the grant.
If it's all one, we're good.
Is it not?
Looks like, yeah.
What was the
I just want to be clear.
Motion
To approve the
is
grant.
Approving the application.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
the application.
Voting equipment.
okay,
That's what
perfect.
that was,
Okay,
That's what we voted on.
yeah.
Okay, and then I do need to get that signed so
So
we
is
can
it
turn it in
all
today.
one?
It was all
All
one.
one,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
You
Thank you.
approve the resolution.
thank you.
okay, let me see, Morrison County.
Okay. Next.
Next thing would be our exempt permits.
I'll make a motion to approve the two that are there, wild gobblers and archers.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Do you have those back? And warrants.
Okay, can I get a motion to accept the warrants, pay the
Also,
bills?
Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski. This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Lemire,
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
and I.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Steve should be here any second.
Oh,
Mr.
brother
Schmidt
Steve.
should be here any second.
Okay. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
We're waiting for the other Steve.
Morning, Steve. Morning, Steve. Yeah, good morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve and Steve.
Kind of to preface it, and I know Steve would talk about it if he was here too, we had the Truth and Taxation meeting last night at 7. Just prior to that, it was the budget fee hearing. We unfortunately didn't have anybody attend, so there wasn't any extensive discussion that occurred from the public, but we did conduct the hearing as required, and we
Morning.
did
Morning,
have the
Steve.
Truth and
Morning.
Taxation meeting as required, and while nobody attended, we were able to go through the budget again, as you have been doing for months now.
Thank you for that report.
Hi. The HRA levy.
HRA. All right, this is no change from the previous year, 32.5. Just need a motion to
So
approve that.
moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right,
Roll call vote, right?
Yes.
roll call, yep.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
And aye.
What's the next one? Fee
Fee
schedule.
schedule.
Did we do this one?
No, you're not.
Okay, we're backwards here.
All right, what I have here then is the 2018, last night we had the public hearing. There were a few changes to some of the fees. Not too many of them. Most
Mr.
of them
Chair, there
remain
were
the same.
very few changes at our public meeting last night, and I'll move on this.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion? If not, this is a roll call vote.
I have a comment to make,
Okay.
just on the fee schedule.
Yep, go ahead.
There was some, I mean, I don't know if you're aware, there was an article in the paper, I don't know if that's been talked about or not, but about tipping fees out at the landfill due to the city. And I just want to let you know, there was no increase to our tipping fees. Has to more to do with volume. I talked to Steve about it, but I just thought you should know that there was an article in the paper that made the assumption that there may be an increase in fees, but that's not what it was. It was more of a volume thing than a tipping fee thing. that the
Mr.
city-
Chair, I actually did talk to the city, and they are well aware of what the fee schedule is and that there were no changes. So whether that was actually presented or just misunderstood at the time from the haulers, but they were aware of that, so I verified that also, just to
Yeah,
make sure.
but I just want to make sure in case you heard that, about that fee change, that there was no fee change to our tipping fees, and there hasn't been for a number of years, so,
Thanks, Steve.
yep.
Okay, we have a motion second. This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
And aye.
All right. Then the last one is to approve, and we have to approve them both separately. The first would be our 2018 levy of $18,448,514. As you know, we've met numerous times on this since the budgeting process started, not only with the county departments, but outside agencies, and this is where we've come through with all the different dealings we've had throughout the process, so.
So moved
Got a
on the
motion-
2018 levy.
We got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion? Yep. This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
And aye.
All right, the next would be then our 2018 budget, which is at $45,289,856. That's an increase of 4.5% from the 17. And we'll need approval on that also.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? This is roll call vote. Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
And aye.
I think that's all I have.
Mr. Chair and Board, thank you for that. You know, as we know, we spend a lot of time on the budget process. The direction you gave to the county leaders has been to make sure that we have a conservative budget that meets the needs of the constituent base, and I think that this was accomplished, and I appreciate that direction, and I think departments take that seriously, and produced a minimal increase for the work that we are continuing to do, which has had increased costs. So thanks for participating in the process and directing that.
Thank you.
I think that handout I had last night, I think it showed the last 9 or 10 years that we've averaged about a 1.55 taxpayer impact levy increase during the last number of years. So that's, when you think about inflation, all the other things that go into our budgets, that's been pretty good.
Yep, it has, and the work that we have done and are able to accomplish, and so, again, under the direction of this board, previous boards, it's been a good, steady approach at governance, and I think we're accomplishing those needs, and we're gonna continue to do so in a very low-cost fashion.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Okay. Public Works.
Where's Steve?
Is Debbie for Steve on here for some reason?
I want to put the state of Minnesota.
Page 122.
No, 122?
Yep.
I pushed the wrong button.
Morning, Steve.
Good
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman. I just have one item for your consideration today. Each year, we typically are successful in receiving federal dollars for support in our transportation system, whether it be safety dollars or construction dollars. That money flows through MnDOT, through the Office of State Aid. And in order for that to be accomplished, we need to have a current agreement with them. We've been operating under agreement that I think was put in place back in 2003, and the Office of State Aid is looking for this to be updated to be current with current state law and current federal law. And so we have included for your review, and it has been tweaked a little bit. The resolution, it has city council, county/county board, remove city council and just have county board on it. On the last, now therefore be it resolved, it also, the final resolution has the Morrison County Board of Commissioners approve entering into the agency agreement. And so we're requesting that the board authorize entering into this agreement and directs the chairman and the administrator to sign the agreement.
So moved.
Got a motion by
Second.
Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Just for your information, that we typically average about $800,000 in federal support for our transportation system. That fluctuates. Sometimes we may get $2 million, and some years we don't get very much at all. But other than that, Mr. Chairman, unless there's questions, I don't have anything else.
Thank you very
Excellent.
much,
Merry
Steve.
Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have administrator's report.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have a few items for your consideration. The first, as you're aware, we've been talking about the fact that there was a law approved last legislative session that authorizes Morrison County to consider appointment of the county recorder position, which has historically in Morrison County been elected. As we've discussed time and again, this is something that has and is not about the current service of Eileen Holberg. She was hired, actually, to fill the position back in the beginning of 2013, based on her skills and her abilities and her competency to do the job. She was then elected and started serving that elected term in the beginning of 2015. So she would have been elected in 2014. I can only assume for the same reasons. So I just want to be very clear on the fact that this isn't about Eileen and her service. She does a fabulous job in the position as county recorder. And I hope continues to do so for well into the future, regardless of how this process or that position is identified moving forward. As you know, in the discussions that we have, a lot of what is causing this debate or causing this discussion throughout the state, at least when I speak to my colleagues or when I was an elected officer in that group talked about, is really about succession planning, is really about making sure that we have the best people in these jobs that are ministerial in nature, where they're not discretionary, they're not they don't have the ability to take the representation of voters and then apply what voters think and feel and do like policymakers do. And so Because of that, this discussion has been happening around the state of Minnesota. And these positions in particular, the recorder and the auditor treasurer, are two that really, due to the change in business practice over the years, and don't operate the same as they did 150 years ago when these positions were first developed and identified and county government started. They are, professionally audited, very tightly governed positions in a county. And so the ability to make sure we have qualified individuals in those positions is very important. They're day-to-day management jobs. They are key in the leadership of the organization. They are looked upon to be, provide consistent leadership throughout that. And so that's kind of why this debate is there, whether again it's what is right for Morrison County or not right for Morrison County, isn't the question on the table. What this resolution is doing is really allowing you to have that tool in your toolbox in the future of this position to say if it is the right thing for Morrison County to appoint instead of elect the county recorder, you as a governing board or a future board has the opportunity to do that. And so that's what this is doing at this point in time. It's the first step of 3 potential steps that you could take if you so choose.
I'll make a motion for more discussion.
We got a motion by Commissioner Winter, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Is there any further discussion?
You can go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Anyway, again, this is something, again, last week, already really time flies, Ron was here, our state representative, explaining what happened, why this is that. But the more important thing to me is we were at the AMC here a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to other counties that are sister counties to Morrison, and they're going through the process also, kind of like Morrison County may do. And I think 1 or 2 of them already had one public hearing, the other ones are gonna be going through it. I personally, again, based on, just talking to other people in my area, I think this is something that we should just look at going through with the public hearings to see what the heartbeat is of our people in Morrison County. Now, one county, they had no one show up for their, and it was a very large county, for their public hearing. And this is coming right directly from the county commissioners. So again, it's not stating that we would still provide, make this an unelected position. I would just, again, like to move forward to see what's happening. Also, a point would be, is if our representative, Mr. Krisha, said that, this is coming. This is coming with the county auditor, treasurer, with the recorder, that eventually that it'll be statewide where the counties can choose from. So I would, rather than just sit there and wait for both of them to come through, here we have an opportunity just to see what the people in the county want to say at these public hearings, and then once we go through that process, then let's decide whether we want to make it a appointed or an elected position. And I believe we got till February.
In order to make the next election cycle, we really ought to have a decision made, which would include the process of holding 2 different public hearings and then a final resolution that would actually authorize that appointment. That would need to be done no later than, my recommendation would be that second meeting in February, so we could make the deadline to the first advertisement of the position would need to go out to the public, that it would be on a ballot.
So that's where my point is on this one. So.
And my comment, Mr. Chair, is very simple, I think. This is the first step that the legislature has given counties, in fact, Morrison County, to do. If we do not do this resolution today, I think I'm right. If we don't do this today, and then a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the board says, or whomever says, this is something that really we should do, we'd have to wait again for, allegedly, the legislature to enact a law, if you will, to do this. So at the very, very least, all we're doing today is giving the board today, or boards in the future, tomorrow, from being able to hold public hearings to find out if this is the direction that said board would want to go. Am I on the right page?
That's what this is.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Levy?
Mr. Chair, thanks. We have two different resolutions here, right?
Yes, I passed out this slight revision, and I think it was a good suggestion that, after talking about it, the proposed resolution just varies slightly. And if I could just identify what the differences are. The first, well, why don't I just read it? It might be just easier to read it. Whereas the laws of 2017, Chapter 92, Article 3, Section 1 authorizes Morrison County to appoint the county recorder subject to subsequent affirmative vote of the county board after properly noticed public hearings. So what that does is kind of say, this is a first step that then would set forth the ability, if you so choose, to take 2 more steps. Whereas laws of 2017, Chapter 92, Article 3, Section 1 does not become effective until authorized by the affected local government unit as required under Minnesota Statute 645.021. Again, you would have to take subsequent action in order to actually make it effective and appointed. Whereas authorization shall occur in the form of a resolution that shall accompany a certificate of approval submitted to the Minnesota Secretary of State prior to the first day of the next regular legislative session, or regular session of the legislature. And that's a certificate that was sent to Deb Lau that she would need to fill out, and just identifying that you took this action today is what that's authorizing. Whereas the Morrison County Board of Commissioners may intend to initiate the process to gather public input regarding the topic of appointing a county recorder in Morrison County at some point in the future. Again, that end date, so to speak, isn't defined for you. You can so choose. Whereas the Morrison County Board of Commissioners firmly believes the incumbent Eileen Holmberg is qualified, capable, and excelling in the role of county recorder, and intends to continue to support her service. That reiterates what we've talked about again and again, that this isn't about Eileen and the service and the job she does. She does a fabulous job. Now therefore be it resolved by the Morrison County Board of Commissioners that laws of 2017, Chapter 92, Article 3, Section 1 is hereby approved. And be it further resolved that the county auditor treasurer is directed to file a certificate of approval with the State of Minnesota Secretary of State in a form prescribed by the Attorney General, together with a copy of this resolution. So it's slightly different than the one that was in the packet, just identifying that any point in the future, and that was a clarification that we had the other day in a question, that it doesn't have to initiate the process immediately. It can be put on a shelf if you so choose to wait at some point in the future, or it can be, it's up to you guys. You have full control of it. Brian?
So the resolution that you read is different than what's
Yes,
up on the
yep,
screen?
slight difference.
That one combines 2 resolutions, whereas the one in front of us is simply the acceptance of the special legislation.
Yeah, the one on the screen says that we're gonna
Go
with the
forward
process
in
with the
initiating
public
it right now,
hearings and
yeah.
the-
Which the board can also do
Yes, yeah.
today, but
I made it more of a two-step
So-
process for sure, yeah.
Do you, nothing. This is the resolution we're gonna be voting on.
This is the one that I'm proposing we vote on to
This-
make it more clear that it's 2
I
separate
think
steps.
this is Commissioner Wincher's
Well,
motion.
again, I want to clarify that. So the motion I made was for just to move the process forward. Doesn't mean that we're gonna approve the elected official or appointed, and that's what this is saying, basically.
This is saying you can do that if you
Right.
so choose to do that, but it's not saying you are necessarily going to immediately do that.
Exactly.
And it was worded a little different based upon, again, last week, Thursday, when Representative Kreshaw was here, there was that question about whether or not it needed to happen immediately, and it does not. And that was clarified. Brian affirmed that discussion, or that thought, and it's just clearer in this resolution. And then we can talk about it after this, about whether or not you want to set public hearing dates.
But if we don't, or if this fails, then it's done.
Then this authorization and this law is not
Well, we'd have to
going
wait for the legislator
For-
again
to do it.
To make it a.
That's what
An
that
option
was
for
my
the county,
statement.
so.
Okay, very good.
Okay, but in this discussion, I think I heard 2 things, because I think your discussion says that if we approve this, we're gonna move on with the public
That's
hearings.
correct, and I want to reaffirm.
That's why
That's why.
I want,
Okay.
that resolution up there says that, this one doesn't.
All right, so now that's why we're going to this one, so I would just want to, my motion would be to accept this, that we're accepting the
legislation.
the legislation's part of it. And then we'll have a discussion after that whether we want to move forward.
And Mr. Chair, that was my second. My second was based on this.
Good
Yes.
clarification.
So this is just giving us the authority to put this in our toolbox for down the road if for some reason we want to enact this or whatever.
Right.
That's what we're voting on here.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'd like to add something. you know, we understand that the right to vote is a sacred right to many, and we understand that that position, those positions, whether it's all the row officers, they were created to keep an eye on us,
Yeah.
to be the watchdog of us. So we're not their bosses, that the citizens of Morrison County are their bosses. With that being said, we also want to have the ability to put someone in them offices if we can't find somebody to run for office. We shouldn't have to be begging people to run for office, but it seems that, you know, it is a difficult thing to go door knocking and ask people for money to campaign. So this is, like you said, something we can have on the shelf if we need it in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Did you abstain from this? Is that what you said?
No.
Oh,
Just
that's what,
explaining
okay,
that we're
that's
not
what I thought you
taking
said. That's why I was confused
the sacred
here.
right
Okay,
lightly.
yes, because I agree with you. I think it's touchy ground where we go with this thing and how
Yeah.
people react to this, so, but to have the authority to be able to do something down the road. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right. And then the other item for discussion, and I just need direction from you, is whether or not you want to move forward with this process and set those public hearings and get that public input at this time, or if you want to just wait and see what reactions you get, or wait and see how the next election cycle goes, or whatever. You know, it's totally up to you. I just need direction on how you want to move forward with that. If you want to set public hearings and you want this to move forward prior to the next election cycle, my suggestion would be that that needs to move more quickly, because of the fact that we need to meet deadlines in order to be able to have direction on what to put on the ballot, really, is how it is. And so that would be something that would make sense if you want to see that for the next legislative session, that you would take action on and set public hearings in January, and then have discussion and consideration of that final resolution based upon that feedback in February of 2018.
Now, if I may, Mr. Chair, again, going what I've said prior, there's still no, if we move forward with the public hearings, there's still no, that we, if after the second public hearing and or whatever, we do not still have to accept the outcome of what happens. We can either say, you know what, let's just move forward. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, to me, that, I think that's one, because now we're, again, I want to see what the public is out there. Based on the information from the other counties, there was no feedback at all, and maybe, you know, I hope we'd get lots of feedback, you know, that's my goal, but if we don't, then at the time, then the board has to make that decision. If we wait until the legislator approves both of them, well, would we do both of them at the same time? Yes, no, I don't know, but we have this one in front of us, and I just like, again, to see the heartbeat of the county.
Mr. Chair, one question I have with that is, Brian, would it be your interpretation that if there's no language that I saw that would limit the number of times you can ask that question and consider that resolution? So does that make sense? Are you following what I'm saying? So if the public hearings are conducted in the short order to see if that should be on the ballot in 2018, would that limit that authorization from, and say they turn it down based on the feedback, would that authorization still exist sometime in the future that they could reconsider that?
Yes, I think this board or future boards can start and stop that process. The issue in front of this board today is whether you want to go forward with public hearings to get a sense of the heartbeat of the county and what the citizens wish. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. And after the public hearings, you can certainly choose not to go forward and put the issue back on the shelf, so to speak, for the future.
Mr. Chair, it's December 12th. Ms. Gruber, when would we need to have a date by? And what I'm trying to get to is, we just started discussing this issue not that long ago, and having a very good discussion. I love it. But would we need to know the next board meeting, the next board meeting, the next, when would we need to know to start having, what am I looking for here? Public comment, public hearings.
What I was just
What am I
indicating
looking
is that a decision, a final decision would need to be made if you want to impact what is on the ballot in 2018. So this position maybe is considered not to be on the ballot if you go through with the entire process and adopt that final resolution. That would need to be done by mid-February.
Okay.
So
Okay.
a public hearing backup, from there would need to be conducted in, probably within the month in order to be able to properly vet that. It's a quick turnaround. It's something that's quick, and that's why it's something your consideration of that,
And another thing that I like, we have an election to replace Mr. Johnson, that this could probably become a debate, because the polls close here. They might, say, okay, what do they think of the county on their side too? So that person, or would be eventually elected, would have some say-so too, because I'm sure they can bring that up as a question of how what side or the other they take.
And Mr. Chair, they may not, this is something that waiting until there's a seated
right.
person may be a valid reason to put that off, so you have a full board, because the final decision would need to be a supermajority, which would mean 4 out of the 5 would need to agree to that, so it may be reasonable to wait until you have a full contingency to be able to consider something that's quite a big deal. So, you just need to tell me what you want me to do, and I'm more than willing.
Mr. Chair, my 2 cents is we put that on the shelf and we wait at a later date. It's not fair, I believe, to the people that want to run for this next election cycle, that they might have to wait till April before, because February was the quickest we could just make a decision on it. There's ample time for a 60-day reverse referendum to take place. Well, that could bring us into April. And for an individual that's running in an election, you want to know, I would want to know on January 1 if I'm going to be running for an office or not. Whether it's, do you need to know that early? No, but you need to prepare for that election. I don't think it's fair. And we hope and pray that Eileen runs again, and we have no reason to doubt that. So I don't think it's necessary. It'd be different if we have nobody running, but we know we have a very capable person that's willing to step up and run for that position.
I have to agree with what you said there, plus I just feel that we voted for this because this was on the table, and it would be off the table if we didn't vote for this resolution. But I also very comfortable with putting it on the shelf and waiting for this seat to be filled. And this also gives people the real opportunity to tell us what they think about this. That's what, I don't want this to be something in a matter of a month. I want people to be aware that this is a possibility, this could come down the pipe, and I would like to get their comments, because this is up to the people. It's taken some rights away from them that they have, and that's just how I kind of feel about this one. I supported putting it in and putting it on the shelf, but I'd like to put it on the shelf for now.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if that's the case, then we'd have to wait another additional 4 years.
It can be done anytime.
Well,
Yes.
but once that person's elected, we can unelect them?
No,
No,
they have to
they'd
finish
have to
their
finish
term.
their
Well, so it's 4
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, but the action wouldn't have to be that
I understand
far.
that, but that,
And I think some of the suggestion or the discussion would be to do that in a time frame that maybe isn't as tight on an upcoming election. Is that kind of, I'm surmising what you're saying here, but it's quick turnaround here.
I think we're not in a critical situation here. I'd like to see this seat filled so that we all 5 have the option to vote on this.
Well, we almost have to, don't we? It does take
80%.
We
supermajority.
don't have to, but it could be
In this
something
case, it
we
would
wish
take
to do.
all 4 of us.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, like I said, I'd like to see this on the shelf for now, and we got time. There's no critical things going on here. We need to take time, and I want to hear from my constituents what they really want to do on this issue. That's,
Mr. Chair, I think there, based on the discussions we've had, reasonable thoughts on both sides of this. There are reasonable approaches to take in terms of making sure that we continue with qualified individuals in these positions that are so very vital to the organization. We have one now in Eileen, and I hope that like Commissioner Lemire says, she does decide to run and is successful in that, because she does a fabulous job with that. So it'd be a different situation if we didn't have anybody filing for office, or if the office was vacant right now, or if we had other things happening. So as far as day-to-day operations, from my perspective, I don't see this as a critical issue at this moment. But I do understand why it's being asked, and I do understand how business has changed in a way that this may make sense for a number of different reasons. So I'm kind of hearing that we'll put this on a shelf, know that the authorization is out there and available if the needs of the organization warrant it. There's a process with this that allows for public input, which is very valuable in a situation like this, because it is a change in governance. It is something that would need to be thoroughly vetted in terms of public input for that. So, fair conclusion? Am I
Yep.
you're seeing head nods and
Yep.
all right?
No,
No.
Not on
What?
that.
Okay.
we don't vote on this or nothing.
No,
There was
no,
never a
I'm not
motion.
hearing that
Okay.
this is something that the
Nothing to vote on.
majority wants to see. Okay. All right. Another action item would be to approve the appointment of Amy Warnberg for District 2 to the Board of Adjustment. Her appointment will start January 1st of 2018.
Mr. Chair, I'll move on that.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, thank you. The 2018 County Board meeting schedule was identified and included in the board packet. I just would like to get overall approval. Meetings can change if something comes up throughout the year and we need to readjust things. Absolutely can change based upon your action, but what I'd like to do is get that general game plan out there and get calendar items out to everybody that are involved with that. And so we did make a couple of changes based upon what could be a general election in April of 2018 for Commissioner 5 District 5 Commissioner race. And so made sure that we adjusted the meetings and such that the first possible time that they would be able to be sworn in that would occur. And so taking all that into account, your approval and consideration of those meetings set out for 2018 would be greatly appreciated.
Make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. Beth, are you gonna forward that all,
Of course.
populate our calendars? Thank you.
If I may also, the 28th of December would be a board meeting also, correct?
The 29th.
No, for next year.
Oh, 31st, the 31st
Is that the 31st?
is what we have down. Would that be the last business date? I guess I didn't.
Oh, there it is, duh, I was looking in the wrong area. All right, sorry about
Are we
that.
good with that, Commissioner Winter?
Hey, all I have to do is read everything.
All right,
Okay, we have
darn it, anyway.
Left to right, left to right.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I knew I needed to run that by you 3-4 times.
Was it really that funny?
Was it that funny?
No, not at all, no. The next action item is to consider the salaries for commissioners for 2018. It is incumbent upon the board that the outgoing board, based on statute, requires action to set the incoming board. We don't have a changeover at this year, but set the commissioner salaries for the next year. So prior to the end of the year, that needs to be done. Based upon discussions within the budget committees that we've had, which includes a budget for the commissioners, I was directed to keep that salary the same. And so it is presented the same as it was for 2017 in 2018.
Excuse me. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded
Second.
by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? You know, the only discussion I have on this, it puts us all in a bind what we should do with our salary. But the way I look at this sometimes is it's not quite right that we keep the salary down to where people have to have enough money to sit on this board because it doesn't pay enough for other people to be able to get on the board and make a living doing it. And I will approve this, but that's just, when it comes to the position, I think that, the position itself sometimes determines what it should be. And I just don't think it's right that you have to have enough living or extra income to be able to sit on this board through the commissioner's salary. So that's just my comment.
Excellent statement, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, it doesn't, the annual cost of living is generally what I start the budget process
Right.
with and recommend for board, but I take direction from you as far as what you'd like to see.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is I think cost of living, as time goes up, everybody else gets it, that this position should get this. I don't care for myself, but I think it's not fair to this position. So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Okay. The next action item is the 2018 contract, 2018 and 2019 contract for the public defender CHIPS contract with Scott Wunderlich as a public defender. There are two different contracts that we have with Scott. One is the CHIPS contract. What is the one that we do the opposite year?
I think it's civil commitments?
Yes, yep, okay, so there's two of them. Both are 2-year contracts. One comes due every year. And so this year, it's the CHIPS contract. Brian did look at the contract and is okay with it moving forward. And I need approval for that, so we can operate in the next couple of years.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded
Second.
by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, one quick question. This is mandated by the state, no or yes?
It is. Every county has to do this.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right. I don't have any other action items, just a reminder that the 29th is the last board meeting here in the boardroom. We will be formally looking at the bids for the construction project that will begin shortly thereafter. We did have a bid opening on the 6th of December, and it did go well. So right now, Contegrity is vetting those bids, making sure all the Ts are crossed and Is are dotted, so that way, when you have those in front of you for consideration, we know they're correct, and we know that they are ready to move forward. And thank you for your attendance at the Morrison County Employee Holiday Gathering that we had last Friday night. It was fun, and it was good to see so many faces there, so thank you for your help with that, and thank you for attending that. I have heard good feedback. It's nice to interact with colleagues in an informal way. We spend so much time with them on a day-to-day basis, so thanks for supporting that and being there, and winning some of the prizes. But,
Thank you guys thanks
Thank
for
you for
everybody
the-
that put it on.
It was a great, Brad and the crew, they did a
yeah,
nice
they
job.
did a very nice job. That's a lot of work.
fantastic
And the
job.
fundraiser for the food shelf went off successfully too. It's amazing how generous county employees are, and I think that says a lot about who we have working here and their appreciation for the work that we do, even though I know it's difficult and hard, and I see that every day. And so it really is nice to see employees step up and really give back to a community that gives so much to us as employees. So thank you for that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, before we adjourn, where are we moving our meetings till after the
We'll
first?
be at the Little Falls City Chamber. And so I'm gonna actually take a group over there today, and we're going to make sure we have all of the ins and outs of how that's gonna operate. The Board of Adjustment, the Planning Commission, and the county board meetings that are all regularly scheduled public meetings are going to be held over in the city chambers. They're gracious enough to open their doors. The boardroom is the last area that's going to be worked on, so it might be a couple of years before we're back in this building conducting those meetings. That seems crazy to say right now, but I can't believe I've been sitting in
what it
this
is.
chair for 9 years, so time flies. It's actually amazing. So that's going to be a change, but I think one we'll get used to, and then we'll change again. And so, yeah.
We'll have to have our tote bags.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So clean out your drawers and the table, and we'll move forward with that. And it'll take some adjustment, but hopefully we have thought of everything, and I thank you for your patience on that.
You want to do your committee? Okay, next
Is there
one.
any other question that you have for me, or anything else that you're waiting, following up on with everything? No? Okay.
Okay, next we have committee reports and upcoming schedules. Jeff, would you like to give us your schedule
This will
first?
be from the 18th through the
Through the 7th of January.
7th of January.
Oh, 7th of January.
I know. There's a short day or two in between the last and the first meeting of the year. so.
Ready, set,
Go.
on the 18th, at
Got it.
8:30 in the morning, we've got a planning meeting at Public Works. On the 19th, we've got a planning meeting here at the Government Center at 8:30 in the morning. And then, to the best of my knowledge, there's a potluck at Public Health at noon. On the 20th, I've got an Armor Executive Committee meeting at 10 o'clock in St. Cloud, followed by an Emergency Services Board at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 5 o'clock that same day, got a Hands of Hope meeting in Todd County. On the 21st, got an Armor Owners and Operators meeting in Alexandria at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 1 o'clock that afternoon, I've got a phone conference dealing on the planning committee for the Public Safety Conference. 7:30 that evening, I've got the Egg Society. Nobody cares about the Christmas show, I don't imagine.
Will you be playing?
Yeah, I will be.
And where is this gonna be at?
They'll be doing a Christmas show at Sobieski,
All right.
excuse me, at Flensburg,
Flensburg.
and in Randall.
What day is that again?
22nd and 23rd.
Oh, okay.
Free advertising.
Well, he didn't, I brought it.
Yeah, you did, you did, definitely you did.
The 27th of December, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I've got a public safety communications conference, planning conference call at my house. On the 28th, there's a state emergency communication board meeting in Arden Hills. I do not expect to be attending that. On the 29th of December should be the county board's final meeting in this room at 9 o'clock in the morning. On the 2nd of December, the county board meeting, the city of Little Falls. On the 4th of January, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a legislative committee conference call. That conference call is at my house. On the 5th, at 8:30 in the morning, we should have a TSWAC meeting. And ladies and gentlemen, that should conclude my schedule through the 7th of January. Thank you.
Okay, Mike?
All right, the only difference I have is the 21st, a TCC meeting. 26th, HRA meeting at 1:30. And then there's a planning commission that evening, correct?
On which day?
The 26th?
Planning
Planning
session.
session at 8:30.
In the
I think
morning.
it's planning commission though, in it, or is that canceled?
We just talked about how the planning,
Or did we move that planning commission to 8:30? Because I did have
planning
that.
commission, planning session, planning, all of that's different, so I
Right.
don't know. I don't have a planning session scheduled for the 26th, because we're having one next week on the 19th, and then the meeting, the actual board
For
meeting
some
is the
reason, did
29th.
Amy make that change?
But
That
there
wasn't
could
in
be
the
a-
morning, the
I
planning
think the planning
commission?
commission was canceled.
Okay,
Yeah, planning commission was canceled for
Oh,
December,
okay.
yep.
yeah, sorry about that.
Have 'em.
No,
Planning's got everything else.
Thank you.
Randy, you,
19th, I have Great River, St. Cloud at 6 o'clock. And on the 28th, I have Soil and Water at 9 o'clock. Otherwise, everything is got moved to.
okay, and I've got the airport commission on the 21st, and I don't know if you said that or not, but do we have a board of adjustment on January 2nd? Or did that just fill in my calendar automatically or something? 'Cause
What's that?
Board of Adjustment at 7 o'clock at night on January 2nd?
I don't know.
Well, this is all kind of one of those, like,
Because I don't know if that was an automatic,
It should be, now that you say that.
First
I'm sorry, what was that, the planning?
I,
First Tuesday is when we have them. I suppose we do, don't we?
Board of Adjustment at 7 I have down here. I
On
don't
the
know.
2nd,
On the 2nd,
at 7 o'clock at night.
right.
I want to say that was canceled. I think I received an email from Sharon. But let me triple check.
That wasn't December.
Board of Adjustments?
And January too. Sharon, Board of
know what?
Adjustment meeting. We will not have a January 3rd, 2018 Board of Adjustment meeting.
I'm having that
I'm just gonna
Shamrock
verify the
meeting on the
planning and zoning, 'cause
19th
that
too.
seems to be-
You have it down on my paper already, but meeting with the Shaman on the Lake Association.
What day?
Oh, I'd like
The 19th,
Of
the
December?
board of adjustment is canceled.
And that's at
January
what time,
1st.
Mike?
1
What about the
o'clock.
planning commission in
First
December?
floor conference room.
What? Canceled, so there is no meeting, which would have normally been on Monday.
Is that meeting room 1, Deb? Local.
Okay, all right, thank
Sorry.
you.
That
I'll
Shamrock meeting,
cancel
is that in meeting
December
one?
26th and January 3rd.
Our first floor?
Probably
Okay,
next
thank
to
you.
my office
Bye.
there,
Oh, right here, where we met last time?
unless we get too many people.
Okay.
December 26th, Planning Commission canceled. January 3rd, Board of Adjustment canceled.
Okay, so on the 26th, we have nothing
No.
going on that day.
Not
according
that-
to- According to,
According to either Planning Session or Planning Commission.
Okay, January 3rd's on a Wednesday. Should be January 2nd, but it doesn't matter.
yes, yes.
It's
Doesn't
canceled for
matter, it's
January.
canceled.
Okay.
No Board of Adjustments.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we got it.
Well, it gets confusing at
It
the end of the
gets
year,
very-
days change
It gets
around
Yeah, it does,
confusing.
it does.
all the time. Yes. Okay, is there anything else? Not? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We got a motion by Commissioner Janinski, second by Commissioner Lemire. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion adjourned.
Okay, you